All right. I think we are live.
Let me see if I can pull up the stream. Oh, yeah, here it is.
All right, I'll just post it on Twitter and... All right, I'll just post it on Twitter and... All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right, I'll just post it on
retweet you.
Twitter and...
Get it up.
All right. That didn't work, so let me try that again. All right, I think we could get started now. I'm going to tweet it one more time, and I'll post it in the Discord quickly. I'm going to tweet it one more time, and I'll post it in the Discord quickly. I'm going to tweet it one more time, and I'll post it in the Discord quickly. I'm going to tweet it one more time, and I'll post it in the Discord quickly. All right, I think that should be good. So what's up, guys? Welcome back to DCA. Sorry about taking a moment there. So I have with me today Mark and Joe from Upside Down Data, and we're just going to talk about the crypto market like we always do. So I think Mark is kind of going to run the show today. So he'll lead us off with some questions, and we'll go from there, and maybe we'll take some of your questions if we have time as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us on, Jay. This is going to be another fun conversation. So there are a couple questions that I have. That I guess the first one I'm going to lead off with is, so obviously, we know that crypto has not been doing especially hot the last, couple of weeks, a lot of dumping, and now we're currently kind of catching our breath a little bit below 21K. And I think no one is arguing that we're in a bull market right now. I think it's not lost to anyone that we're in a bear market. And the first question I have is, how deep do we think this bear market will go or needs to go before we can have any hope of upside? Do we think that this is going to become a full-on crypto winter, something like we saw back, going 2014 to 2015, or, coming off of the run in 2017, going all the way in 2018-19? Or do we think that a quicker recovery could be in the cards in some situations? So, Jay, I'll lead with you. What are you thinking on that question?
Yeah, actually, Joe, would you mind answering first?
Joe,
because I'm trying to make sure that some people are saying the sound wasn't working correctly. So
You just want to make sure that you can agree with whatever.
I want to make sure that I don't have the opposite answer of you.
I feel like,
and to interrupt quickly, could you guys let me know in the chat, is the sound better now? Okay. All right. I think I could probably lead it off. I didn't even hear the question, to be honest. So if you want to ask it again, I don't mind going first, or if Joe, if you wanted to.
go for it, Jay.
Well,
so
let's
just
hear
to
the
repeat
question.
the question. Just to repeat the question real quick. It was just, things have been very bearish. We're very much in a bear market. Do we think that this is going to turn into a full-on crypto winter like we saw 2014 going into 2015, or even worse? Or is there any possibility of this turning back to the upside more quickly? What kind of factors are you going to be looking for either side of that?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, with inflation the way it is, and a lot of the economic issues, that's ultimately what's going to determine whether the market turns around or not. And it's nothing we haven't kind of covered ad nauseum at this point. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be able to tell you definitively what will happen with the economy. But as long as the economy is in a situation where it's there's disincentive towards taking on risk assets, and specifically that's going to reflect in inflation, in inflation and interest rates, et cetera. As long as you're seeing that continue to sort of be on the more ugly side of things that we've been experiencing for some time now, I think you're going to be in a place where it's going to be tough to see the markets really go on a long and sustained rally. Especially people are talking about things like anyone talking about something towards a new all-time high right now is out of their mind, in my opinion. So I don't think there's any advanced metric that you can look at to say right now that, oh, this is happening in the background, so this is telling me that we're going up from here. What I do think, though, is what we want to see is continued usage of these networks and continued user engagement. That is what we want to see to eventually propel us into the next market cycle. Because ultimately, this product, cryptocurrency, we're relying on it for its uses now. We're beyond the point where anyone's going to accept every 4 years we go on big price runs. If it can't fulfill a lot of the use case scenarios that we envision for the asset class, then I think a lot of these segments of the market are going to be dead in the long run. So that's what we need to see now. We need to see new innovation, new actual use cases, things that are reliable at that, because the DeFi space has, by and large, showed in these last few months a lot of the criticisms that people have been lobbying towards it. And, a lot of that is playing out now, where we're seeing that a lot of these DeFi protocols were not safe and were not credible and were ultimately just money traps. And, a lot of people have lost their life savings in these various DeFi protocols now. So, I think we're in for some growing pains, and I think there's a lot to be hopeful for, but there's a lot of things that have occurred over these last few months now that have showed us what the problems with the asset class as a whole are. And those are going to need to be rectified, or, I think the market's going to look a lot different in the next 4 years than it looks right now.
So Joe, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like the question is, just to reframe it slightly, whether we're going into an ice age. Because if this isn't a winter, then I don't know, you must be from Florida or something. This has been a pretty brutal bear market already. How much deeper can we go? I don't really know. I feel like probably not that much deeper, because, just based on historical price action, there's a lot of confluence that would suggest that, we're not going to slice through the previous all-time high and keep going down to zero. Or at least that's my expectation. But, everything that you said, Jay, has to be taken into account too, right? If we're just looking at the internal history of Bitcoin and the cycles that we've witnessed in the past, then I would state what I just stated more confidently. But if we're entering a recession, if this is going to be an extended period of macroeconomic downturn, then maybe all bets are off. So I guess that's really the question, is like, what assumptions are you willing to make about the economy and about what the Fed is comfortable with in terms of letting the markets continue to slide? And, that's anybody's guess. I do suspect that the Fed is watching things very closely, and has been trying to get their more aggressive interest rate hikes in now so that they can start to ease off the gas. But I'm not an expert in economics, so that's really just my personal thesis. The other thing I would say is that if we are going to enter a recession, then that will probably kickstart innovation in the space. That's exactly what happened with the 2008 recession. The internet as we know it today and the huge players in that space really got off the ground starting in 2007, and then in 2008 and 2009, really that's when their foothold, was kind of uncontestable. And I think innovation is just naturally easier in bearish times. There's less pressure to continue pushing narratives to make people who have really high expectations for their investments happy. It's when people leave the market that founders and builders can make progress kind of unimpeded without a lot of people breathing down their necks. So the worst case scenario, it seems to me, is not actually that bad, because it'll just allow the space to mature, and people who spend this time, instead of getting distracted completely by other things, instead accumulating fundamentally strong projects. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about what some of those are later on. But people who spend this time doing that have very good odds, I think. The odds are really in your favor if you can stick around through a downturn like that, especially if it's extended. We'd all like it to go back up to the upside. Like I said, I think that there's a decent possibility, or at least it makes sense to, it wouldn't be like shocking, right? If maybe the 15 to 20K region did serve as the final resting place for this Bitcoin bear market. But regardless, this is like where the kings are made. So stick around. That's what I think about it. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I think you both made excellent points. And I think my general outlook probably falls somewhere in between what you guys were talking about. Because I definitely agree with you, Jay, that macro is driving the ship. Things are not looking good. Recession is very likely. But I also agree with you, Joe, that if historical trends continue, right now is about where you'd expect, based on a lot of those indicators, kind of maximum pain to start coming in. Now, the one thing that I've been thinking about as well, and I've seen some people talking about this on Twitter, and it's an interesting point, with markets, stock market and then crypto market also, it's always forward looking, right? If there's a recession on the horizon, usually the stock market will price that in before it actually happens, unless there's some kind of black swan event that's triggering it that no one could have expected. So, the COVID crash, no one knew that was coming really, so the market couldn't price that in ahead of time, so the market crashed on the news. The 2008 housing market explosion, except for a few people, no one really saw that coming. Market capitulated along with the news. But with a lot of other kind of more quote unquote typical bear markets, tends to be whatever the driver is kind of shows up in the actual data a little bit later, and the market tends to recover a little bit sooner than whatever that macro factor was. And some people, I've seen some people talking about, are we still in a secular bull market, in kind of broader equities, or is this the beginning of a secular bear market? And that seems like an important question to ask, because if we're in a secular bull market still, and this is just a local bear market, sure, it could get worse, things could go poorly. But then I think if we are still in a secular bull market, it doesn't really break the trends that Bitcoin has existed in its entire time. Bitcoin, it hasn't seen a horrible bear market in its time being live, but it's seen some kind of mini ones throughout that whole time. So it's reasonable to expect, I think, to some degree, that if we're in a cyclical or in a secular bull market still, then some of those patterns might continue. And it's really, if we're going to go into something more extreme, that it's going to get worse. And the final point on that I've heard people talking about, that I do just think is interesting to think about, is that a lot of people have been saying this is the most talked about recession before the fact ever. Like, this is like the recession that literally everyone has seen on the horizon for a very long time, and it's all that anyone's ever talking about. And so that's where, obviously the market is kind of continually to go down. So it's not like it all got priced in immediately. But to think that we haven't priced in at least some of it, I think that's questionable, because everyone knows it's coming. It's really just a debate, I guess, of how bad, the market thinks it's going to get. If there's going to be some kind of other event that's going to come and, catalyze us to something even further to the downside. But I think as long as the market is kind of knowing what's coming, I'd be a little bit surprised if we get something as drastic as like the COVID crash again, unless there's some extreme black swan news that would come out, because we've already priced in, a lot of recession expectations. And so, if we were to suddenly get, inflation catapulting up, above 10%, maybe that would be something that could drive markets into the ground if there's no sign that, anyone can let off the gas on inflation anytime soon. But short of that, I think that there's a possibility. So that's where I'm kind of in the middle is I don't know if any of that's going to happen. I don't know if the market's really priced in the recession or if should we start seeing earnings slide if the market still has another 20% of the downside or whatever. And then that would obviously drive crypto way down with it. And then I would expect a lot of these indicators we've used to look for bottoming points to no longer have much value. But if it ends up being the case that we're just kind of playing through a continuation or towards the end of a secular bull market, and this is just a cyclical bear market, that would be one case where I could see a plausible argument where maybe the worst has already been priced into the market from a macro perspective, which could then give an ease for crypto. But then to talk about the crypto winter, I don't think that would necessarily mean we'd go on a V-shaped recovery. I think there very well could be the case that equities could start recovering, but then this time around, crypto actually kind of still hangs out in the doldrums because, as you mentioned, Jay, so many people, especially retail people, have just been completely rinsed by this bear market. They've seen their savings go to zero. And, it's really retail investors who kind of put in those parabolic moves, or at least that's what we've seen. It's really when the retail comes in the hype, machine kicks into high gear, that's when price goes exploding. And then that really drives those runs. And I just think there to some degree, too many retail people burned, and memory is not going to be short enough to let them just all flood back into the space, or maybe they just don't even have capital to put back into the space even if they wanted to. So my expectation is that we're probably going to have to spend a while in the doldrums, even if equities or the broader market starts to relieve. Just I don't know if we necessarily, if broader equities relief, I don't think we necessarily go further down from here if crypto is kind of left on its own like that. But those are just some thoughts that I've been thinking about. Either you have additional thoughts that came up through this discussion about this question?
Well, the only thing I would say is, I don't know if this would count as black swan event because typically you can't see a black swan event coming, but I think the clear and present risk of sort of an event that would drive things much farther down would be, the two potential or the one realized conflict, which is Ukraine and Russia escalating in some way. And then the second would be that with China and Taiwan in this case. I think that's sort of looming over the markets as well at the moment. And the longer the conflict between Ukraine and Russia goes on, that's creating global supply chain issues and, the fuel crisis that, I think a lot of people, especially in the US for the first time, are truly acutely feeling sort of the prices that the rest of the world has been paying for gas for quite some time now.
Yeah, totally fair points. And I agree that, if war to break out between China and Taiwan, that would probably be very, very bad across the board. And then, escalation would also be a problem. Joe, did you have something that you were going to add?
Yeah, well, I mean, about war, it's kind of unpredictable, though, what the effects will be. So it wouldn't be a bullish development. But at the same time, I think a lot of people didn't really read the situation right when war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. There was an immediate dump in the market. But the effects on currency markets, for example, have kind of backfired on policymakers. The ruble crashed and has now rallied a lot. I'm just pointing out that it might not be so straightforward necessarily what the effects of conflict could be. Conflict also stimulates the economy. So
I would say, though, it stimulates the economy in different circumstances. Production hasn't been necessarily the problem. Like historically, war may have stimulated the economy.
We do have some areas of the economy where there's a supply shock playing out. And some of that's a ripple effect from companies scaling down production during COVID. So like the airline industry, for example, that's obviously like one kind of service that isn't super closely connected to crypto, but I think probably is more connected than it seems obvious that it would be. I don't know. It's just, there are a lot of variables at play. But the other thing I was going to mention, I'll leave it there, actually. I'll come back to this one. Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good. So we can pivot to another question that I have. now. So that was kind of talking about the bear market, how deep, how bad we think it's going to be. Let's look forward to the future, though. I think, well, probably all of us on this call can agree that crypto is we don't expect it to go to absolute zero and go away. So we do expect there to be another bull run at some point. We just don't know when or from where it will start. But when that bull run starts, one thing I'm curious about is, what are some of the narratives that you think are going to drive that bull run? And what I mean by this is, I think with a lot of the more recent kind of bullish movements, they've been very kind of specific assets that have really benefited and narratives that have surrounded them. So going out of the summer of 2020 into 2021, DeFi was a huge narrative around that. And a lot of the DeFi tokens absolutely exploded during that time. Saw massive growth that they've not come even close to replicating since then. And then coming out of the summer of 21, it was really alt layer one protocols, going into kind of gaming and metaverse as well, that really took off and put in massive moves during that time. So from that kind of perspective, I'm curious what you guys think as being another possible narrative that could drive the next run, or types of assets that you think could benefit, if you think those are even identifiable or able to be speculated about at this point. So Joe, I'll start with you this time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a really hard question. I mean, I guess like the easiest prediction to make is something along the lines of the next generation of layer ones. Maybe it's the layer twos that benefit from that the most, but functionality, right? Some kind of layer that can host useful applications that people will use. That really doesn't even exist yet. I mean, Ethereum is the closest thing to that, and Ethereum will continue to perform well in the long term, most likely. But it's the barriers to entry, the cost of using it are so high that I think still that's there for the taking. Anyone who can solve that problem and make a layer one usable and appealing is going to benefit a lot. So that's one side of it. Another thing that I think is potentially interesting is to think about the untapped audiences for the crypto space. And the most obvious one for that is like 50% of the population of women who don't participate in crypto very much. And that is reflected in the way that crypto products are marketed. So I was actually talking to a female friend of mine about this recently. And I was like trying to get her a little bit interested, and she basically wasn't buying the presentation and the aesthetic, and she could tell that it wasn't being marketed to her. Like take your Avalanche or whatever might be like a natural point of entry for someone to get their feet wet and start using crypto. That's just like a massive, massive market opportunity for anyone who can figure out how to seize it. That's obviously not utility based. It's marketing based, but you asked about narrative, so I feel like that's fair game. I think that could be potentially, I think it most likely will be eventually, whether it's the next cycle or a future cycle, someone is going to figure out how to onboard women, and they're going to make just an obscene amount of money doing it. And the investors in those projects that have success with that are going to benefit a lot too. So I think that thinking about the utility and the kind of sectors of the market that are providing useful functionality, and also thinking about the untapped populations who are going to grow the space. And crypto will be mainstream fully when everyone's using it. It's just part of our daily experiences, just like Web 2 is. The people who today are writing obituaries for crypto, which are all over the place, people are just dancing on the graves of crypto. Those people are going to be crypto holders too. So who's going to bring them in? That's, I think, going to be a major, major theme in one of these next cycles. So I don't know if those things exist yet, but if I see someone marketing a product to women, and it's a good product, that would be interesting. So maybe that's a little bit of like an out of left field type of answer, but I think it could play out. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, so I think you're spot on with that. And in fact, it goes hand in hand with my answer, actually, what I think may potentially lead sort of the fervor in the next bull run. And that's, so if we look at, onboarding women into the crypto space, and we think about what's one of the up and coming industries that people are excited about in the crypto space, and that's going to be Web3 and specifically gaming. So when we think about that, I think I've kind of been approaching this problem all wrong. I've been thinking, Web3 crypto gaming is never going to take off until we get to a place where, real game developers come in. Like, we're talking AAA games here. But I think if you look at that segment of the market, and I think I can speak to that segment of the market a little bit because, I'm myself a gamer. I don't think that those individuals that are hardcore in that space are necessarily going to embrace crypto. And we've seen this already with Ubisoft announcing that they're going to be getting into that space. We saw Discord announcing that they're going to be getting into that space, and just a violent reaction against it. And that's because I think those types of people have a certain a resistance to change, and that's part of almost gamer culture. No matter what happens, there's a resistance to change in that space. So we can extend that a little bit then and start to think about play to earn models and, crypto gaming in general, and start to move into, well, let's think about where is a growing sector of that, just, gaming in general. Where's a growing sector there? And it's with women, and it's with mobile gaming. So something like 55% of mobile gamers are women, and another approximately 50% of them are over the age of 35. So that's two major untouched segments of the crypto market. Older than 35 women. That's a huge percentage of the potential market out there. And I kind of think for that reason that, I don't think that crypto gaming is necessarily going to be able to break into the AAA type game. And if you're unfamiliar with that term, AAA gaming is talking about, your big studio blockbuster release gaming titles. I don't think they're necessarily going to be able to break into that space. So I think their natural entry point into the space is via mobile type gaming, mobile type play to earn gaming. And then if you extend that further, that is also your most popular type of gaming in Southeast Asia, which tends to be, coincidentally or not, intimately involved with the crypto space. So you have these major demographics in the crypto market, and just, in the world in general. You have these major demographics who are not involved with crypto necessarily yet, that you can access via play to earn type gaming, which Southeast Asia has also embraced, just in tune with that. And I think that sort of gives so much potential for that segment of the market specifically. And I don't think it's necessarily the exciting, I don't think it's as exciting of a, potential for the space that what it may grow into. But I do think there are huge dollars that could be, captured by specifically mobile gaming associated with the crypto play to earn model.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I want to piggyback off that a little bit. There's kind of two points I want to make, but I'll start with gaming because I think it's a really interesting point. And I also think that gaming could be a big thing. But I think my perspective on gaming is less about focusing on the market, which I actually agree is very important. I didn't know all those stats about, the market for older women gamers, which is interesting. But I actually made a video about this, I think a couple of months ago, maybe, where I talked about how from a psychological perspective, I think there's actually a lot of reasons to think that play to earn is a terrible marketing strategy that actually is going to get a lot of games wrecked ultimately. So to give some background, there's this psychological effect called the over-justification effect, which basically the idea there is if I'm engaging in some kind of behavior, like playing a game, I'm going to be, implicitly asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I playing this game? With most games, when you're not being rewarded in any way, there's no external reason for you to do it. You just picked it up because, I want to play Call of Duty or whatever. You'll answer that question like, oh, I'm playing it because I enjoy it, right? Like, why else would I be playing this? It must be because I intrinsically enjoy the game. But if you're being rewarded, if someone said, hey, I'll pay you $20 if you go play Call of Duty right now, then what people tend to do is when they ask themselves, why am I playing this game? they'll say, oh, I'm doing it because this person just paid me $20. That's the reason. And so then if in the future, if you don't have someone, willing to pay you to play that game, there's research that would suggest that you're actually less likely to do it, because you're basically have told yourself, I play this game for the reward. I don't play this game because I actually enjoy it. And so that's one of the things that I think is going to be challenging with it's in the name, play to earn, that they're really kind of grinding into your psyche that you are playing these games because you want to earn money, and that's the only reason you're doing it. And so they're not actually building any loyalty over the game. They're building loyalty about just earning profit. And then to the degree that you can do that, maybe you're happy, but you're probably not really going to be enjoying it all that much. I think people talk about this with like Axie Infinity, for example, being one of the more premier ones. A lot of people said, yeah, Axie is not that fun to play, or a lot of people didn't really enjoy it, but they did it for the profit. But then once, Axie crashed, everyone just kind of abandoned ship.
I think I could contest you a bit there, Mark, because Axie Infinity actually still has a rather high retention base, even though there's no money to be made left in that game.
Right. Although the active player base has been dropping. At least that was my last time I looked.
Sure. Yeah, it certainly did drop, and you lost a lot of those people that were there just to earn. And I will say, I think the game's terrible, but I also think mobile gaming is terrible. And I also think you're right for the reason, or you're right in that play to earn models are going to have a really hard time breaking into that AAA segment of the market. And in fact, that's the reason a lot of people have even stated they are resistant to having their game associated with a play model around it. Because why am I playing the game? I'm doing it to escape from reality, to sort of escape from the, I go to work and I grind a 9-to-5 job. Why would I want to come home and then, come right back to that sort of economic situation? And that's why I think mobile gaming is sort of a natural place for that segment of the market to land, because, when you're looking at the demographics who are dedicated mobile gamers, like we said, they tend to be 35-plus-year-old women. And a lot of those, may be stay-at-home moms or, things like that. And I think that sort of helps them escape from the, they aren't going to a 9-to-5 grinder. So they're just people who just pass time by, playing these little mobile games. It's like, I can't think of any specifics at Doodle Jump, for instance. I don't know. They're not like serious games in and of themselves. They tend to be more simple, like Candy Crush, for instance, games like that.
Right. I mean, it's very well possible. And, maybe some of those kind of gaming, those kind of designs are more suited for it. But I think kind of my thought is, I don't think that I should clarify that I don't think that crypto gaming is going to go away, or that it can't be a big thing. It's just that for me personally, I think the ones that are going to succeed are actually the ones that focus a lot more on the gameplay than they do on the crypto element, because that's what we've seen so far, is that a lot of these games, what they'll do is they'll have just the barest shell of a game that they can possibly come up with, but then just try to put all their marketing into selling you NFTs, kind of just trying to get all the money in. And it's not even a game that, even if it didn't have if the game didn't have crypto as a part of it, no one would want to play it because it sucks. So for me personally, in this bear market, what I'm going to be looking for in the gaming sector is what game comes out, mobile or otherwise, that's actually a good game that puts the game first and then the crypto as being kind of a supporting role. Because I think ironically, that could actually be the game that both does better, but also generates more crypto revenue than a game that's just pumping the crypto elements so heavily that, they sacrifice the game for this kind of blockchain element that's not really adding a whole lot to the experience.
If I could add one more thing, Mark, I think touching on what you're saying there, another big thing that the future of that space is going to need to consider is the tokenomics, because that was one of the big issues with Axie Infinity, was they didn't have a sustainable token distribution system. And so essentially, as more and more players came into the game, inflationary pressure basically just wiped out the value of the token. And I think the new era of Web3 gaming, I think that's something that they're acutely aware of and are considering, going forward. And this is just, it's sort of an area of the market that I kind of have an interest in. So I've done some research on it. And I think a lot of the new games that are coming out actually are attempting to, for instance, one of the new games, I can't recall its name off the top of my head, but it's going to be a first-person shooter, and it's made by actual, these are going to be big studio game developers who quit working for Konami or whatever it was, and now they're, making a first-person shooter game. But the tokenomics will be distributed such that you're rewarded based on skill, and so there's tournaments that go on all day long, and you win if you win the match, not just for participating. And I think that could that could be valuable going forward, where there's just not massive inflationary pressure always being put onto the token supply like we saw with Axie Infinity, until eventually it's impossible for the price to go up because there's so many tokens out there.
People need something to spend their rewards on.
Yeah,
if everyone
that too.
Just
yeah.
To liquidate, if like every week you just send it to the bank.
Spot on. Yep.
Yeah. And the one final thing I'll say, pivoting away from gaming, is just one of the things I've been thinking about a lot with this is I actually personally, one of the bones I've had to pick with crypto for, forever really, is that a lot of it's very, incestuous might be an extreme word, but it's all kind of inward focused, right? A lot of the assets that we look at as being kind of the most fundamentally strong, like Chainlink is inherently about crypto. It's about making crypto function, right? It's an asset that gets its utility by the utility provides crypto. It doesn't, except for some small partnerships, elsewhere, for the most part, Chainlink's utility is providing data to blockchains. That's what it does. And it's the one that a lot of people point at as being, one of the most fundamentally strong assets. But to really bring in the masses, I think that we're going to have to get to a point where there are use cases for crypto that really bridge outside, that are generating cash flow. Because crypto right now doesn't really do that. Crypto grows by new money coming in. It's not inherently generating new cash flow. And the protocols that do, like Ethereum with its gas fees, a lot of that's coming from people already in crypto because they're just using the network. It's not bringing in people from the outside like we're talking about, the people who have never used it before. And so I think a lot of those projects are very much in their infancy, and I don't think a lot of them are going to die that are trying to do that so far. Like Helium trying to create a decentralized cellular network, essentially.
Internet computer.
Yeah, our internet computer. But and also, frankly, those are not all that exciting, because all that those are trying to do is take a legacy system and then just put a blockchain element to it that maybe can do it better if it really reaches its full potential, but not really. And so this is one of the things where I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but my hunch to some degree is that one of the next big things that's going to drive crypto up is when someone comes up with an application for crypto that's crypto specific, but brings in new users from the outside and generates a cash flow for itself. That's not just focused in on crypto. It's not just something that makes crypto itself more efficient, but something that actually solves some real world problem that exists that needs crypto for this new innovative solution. It's not just iterating, because no one gets excited about a small iteration, right? If you tell them, if you tokenize, like Netflix, and you could sell your Netflix subscription, people might say like, oh, that sounds interesting, but that's not going to really get people excited.
Right.
If you can do something like, the internet, and then the new things that are possible with that, that's when I think it'll really explode. And so I think we're getting to that point where crypto is going to have to start doing that to really push to the next level. But that's just my kind of hunch.
Yeah, I agree.
Joe, sorry, do you have something that you're going to add to that?
No, I agree with you. I think the obvious one is payments. I don't know if that's revolutionary enough, but it does have the potential to catch on. Crypto is obviously better suited to some needs. You've got to send money across the world quickly, then that's the quickest way to do it. There are obstacles to that. Governments basically need to cooperate in allowing that to become the norm. So there are also, there are those kind of obstacles. But I agree with you. Yeah, people need to start using crypto without even knowing that they're using it, or at least without specifically wanting to be a crypto user. It just needs to have some kind of practical draw that is just better than the alternatives. And then there won't be a debate about it anymore. It won't be, is crypto good or is crypto bad? It's, I need to send this payment, so I'm going to use whatever application is available to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just to follow up on payments real quickly, I mean, one of the things that's interesting there is it's actually, merchants should probably like to get crypto payments because they're having to pay currently, like 3% transaction fee. Every credit card transaction is just, they're just out 3% because they have to pay that off to the credit card company. Whereas if someone's paying in crypto, they're paying nothing. The sender would pay the transaction fee and they're just getting the full amount. And it's definitely better for them. I think the issue with payments is how do we convince users that it's actually better? Because really, the payment rails we have right now for the user are pretty seamless. You just take your credit card, you use Venmo, you use PayPal. It's not really that hard. You're not the one who's having to incur the fee. It's all on the merchant. So I think that's where, if they can figure out how to do that, I think that very well would be a massive market that they could start tapping into. And I'm curious what credit card companies would do in that kind of a situation, because it's really coming for their lunch at that point.
I think they're preparing. I don't know exactly what they're doing to prepare, but they're all hiring blockchain positions. They're all researching this space. I think that they want to get in a position where they can snap into that functionality if they're being outcompeted on it. So I wouldn't count out the Visas and MasterCards of the world. I think they'll probably be at the forefront of this if it takes hold.
I agree.
Yeah. Do we have any, I haven't been monitoring the chat. Are there any questions that have come up in the chat?
No, someone wants to know if we have a crystal ball. Other than that, I don't think.
I wish. And that would be very convenient right now.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up because I think we're on a bit of a time crunch tonight anyway. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, yeah, this is a great discussion. So yeah, thanks for having us on, Jay. This is
certainly
good discussion.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yep. So that's going to be it, guys. And thanks to Mark and Joe for coming on tonight. And that'll be it. So until next time, guys, see you.
See you.
Hey, everyone.
Whoops. I don't know how to end the stream. There we go.